Hey guys, and welcome to my tutorial and showcase on Hunger Games. So in this video we're going to cover the installation and the extraction into your map for the Hunger Games prefab, as well as the setup and configuration and kind of explanation around how the game revolves and what to do. So alright, so those unfamiliar with Rust Edit, this tutorial won't cover how to install it, how to extract a map file or anything like that. It's just simply going to show you how to work with the map file that you have and how to put Hunger Games into it, and just how to make sure, like, basically the easiest way possible. So if you already have this prefab, it is definitely still worth watching this video because things have changed, and I will segment the video as well, so you can skip ahead to things like the plugin configurations and whatnot. So a couple of key changes is that the crates are no longer a thing, either as the loop profile because it's all handled by the plugin, and you can also now create your own loop profiles. So if you want to have, you know, guns and stuff in there as well, you can do that and add multiple profiles and have it randomly choose between them as the game goes. So what we're going to do is we're going to load up our map now. So I've just generated a random map. So once this loads up, we're going to find a little bit of space in the game or in the world to dump Hunger Games. It is a pretty large monument. This is only 2.5K map, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes. So we'll be with you when this is loaded up. Alright, so we're in the map now. Alright, bit of room down here, so I'll probably stick it around here. So if you're not unfamiliar, you can press G to open up your map, and you can double click on it to teleport your camera angle into a different position. You can hold down right click to move this around, and you can hold down right click to move this around. So a couple of quick tips there. So the first thing we're going to do is going to remove the water, because we don't want the edge of the Hunger Games prefab to leave the bounds of this terrain here. So we're going to go to the prefabs tool up here, go to prefabs list and type in Hunger Games. Now, completely forgot, you probably want to extract the prefab into your folder. So you can go into your, navigate to your Rust Edit folder, open up your custom prefabs folder, and if you don't have it, create it with this capitalization as well, capital C, capital P. And then what you want to do is you want to go to the file and then move Hunger Games into here. I've already got it, so I'm not going to override it, but yeah, you guys can. And that's all there is to it in terms of the file side of things. And then once you've done that, you can press this little refresh prefab button here and it refreshes all your files, and yeah, it becomes visible. So I'm going to use Hunger Games, Hunger-Games-Jan-2022, which is the latest version at the time of this video, and I'm just going to simply drag it out. So a couple of changes here for those who are familiar with the plugin. Instead of using the SAM sites, I've actually deleted them all, and I've simply surrounded this in a brush that prevents players from moving through it, so you can basically stop people from entering the arena and stealing loot, rather than having to shoot helis down and people finding ways to get around it, because, you know, Rust players are definitely crafty buggers. So what we're going to do now is we're simply going to position this somewhere so it's easy to do what we need to do with it. I'm going to raise this up so the edge of the monument is kind of sort of sitting just in the ground. So not too high, not too low. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply just the height mask for now. Now I'm going to do this a couple of times because Rust's height mask applications are not fantastic. So I kind of stopped doing it when it's not moving as much. That way you've, know she's working. Wouldn't stress too much about this. I'll show you how to, actually I'll show you how to get rid of it now if you want to, if you're pedantic, but realistically this is all going to be submerged for the most part. Actually not very deep there, is it? That's alright. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into our terrain tool, go to our smoothing brush type, modification type, and then we're going to select our brush size and our opacity, and just very gently left click along the bottom here. And that's just going to kind of break away that really rough edge. You don't really need to do this again, like it's sort of, it's one of those things, it's not going to make or break your prefab. It's just more of an aesthetic thing, and realistically, yeah, it's really probably not even worth doing, to be honest. So, but I'm going to do it anyway, because just in case you guys, want to see how it's done. And also another thing, probably isn't a fantastic idea to overwrite these little underwater bubs. So either be sure about where you want to put this, or make sure you delete these. So we're not, so they're not being ruined by this prefab. Alright, so before we do any painting or any alpha applications, I'm going to apply the height mask for now. We're going to do a little trick to remove any ocean topology and whatnot easily. So I'm going to make all these brushes invisible because they're in the way. So I'm going to go view and then untick the show volumes box. I'm going to go into my terrain painter, select my topology layer, and then I'm going to select forest, because forest is probably fairly common with a lot of our topologies. Should probably even just erase. I can't do that with that, can I? So yeah, alright, what we'll do is we'll go the paintbrush. So make sure paint tool set to paintbrush. Adjust the size so it's a nice large size. I'm going to make sure clear underlying topology is selected. So what we're going to do is we're going to paint over all of this. Kind of just skirt the edges there. Wouldn't go down into the water because you don't want forest in your ocean. And yes, trees do spawn underwater if the topology allows them to. So I'm just applying this now. And what that means is if we choose the ocean, if we look at the ocean topology now, it means that it's gone, like it's been removed from the surface of our map. Now what we can do is we can left click on our prefab and apply the topology mask. And then if I go back to my terrain painting tool and look at field and look at all these other ones, you can now see I've got the topology on there. So what I will do is I will just quickly erase the field topology that I've just put on. And the reason for that is because I'm going to use it, I'm going to reapply it, but that way it stays in the same place. But the benefit of doing it this way is you're not having to go through every one of the topology channels that could potentially affect the tree spawns and then erase them. It's a pain in the ass. So this is definitely the easiest way to do it. We've just simply applied a topology layer over the top, erasing everything that's under it. And then we have applied our new topology and then erased the forest topology that we've just put on. And then reapplied the topology. But I mean, you can probably erase it before you apply the topology, so you have to apply it once. But yeah, now our topology is all good. We have cliffside, all that other fun stuff, so that is all fine and dandy. Nothing else we really need to do there. What we do need to do is apply the splat, so it doesn't look like a arid desert, as well as the alpha mask. Now, for some reason, I decided to deploy this in the desert. It's traditionally going to be a temperate sort of game. So what I will do very quickly is I will just go over the biome. So I'm going to click on my terrain painter, go to biome, select temperate, and we're just going to give this a quick temperate sort of change. Because the trees do look much prettier when they're luscious and green, not when they're horrible and aridy. Yeah, that's all we really need to do there. So, yeah, so that's all we need to do for the topology side of things. As you can see here, there's no loot spawns here anymore. One thing we will need to do now, though, is we'll need to fix up our alpha. So Rust just doesn't do alpha very well when it comes to different scalings and resolutions for your materials. So what we're going to do is we're going to manually fix that up very quickly. So what we're going to do is we've applied everything here now. So we're going to break the prefab. We're going to hold down Control and left click just over these elevators, which is selecting the terrain trigger which we want to remove. So we're going to press Control H to hide them. Now we're going to do the same thing with our elevators. This one gives us a bit more room to see. So you can see here we've got some terrain stuff we need to fix up. So go to our trusty terrain painter brush again, change it to splat, change the paint tool, sorry, the paint tool to, sorry, no, we're going to go alpha, not splat, what am I doing? Go to paint tool as eraser and set the size down to 1. And then all we're going to do is just simply, sorry, no, we're going to paintbrush. Set the paint tool to paintbrush, layer to alpha, and then we left click along in the center here where we don't want the terrain to be. You can see here it's being moved. So I'm just going to do this for all of the layers here. Now, just as a side note, this doesn't have to be perfect, just purely aesthetics that this is for. This actually doesn't prevent your players from not going through the terrain or going through the terrain. It's just simply a cosmetic thing. So if there's a hole in the map and there's no terrain trigger to accommodate it, players won't be able to go through it. So if I tried to go through there, I wouldn't be able to. Now what we also need to do now is we need to fix up these little holes in the side. So we're going to change it from paintbrush to eraser and just go over them. And basically just removes any alpha. Alpha is just basically invisibility for the terrain layer. So it makes it invisible, not render the terrain splats. Looks pretty good, so that's all done there. And that is pretty much it. So press Control H to unhide everything. Got our elevators there. Down in the lobby down here it's all good. I mean, you can put whatever you want down here. The only thing I will say is do not delete the Pookie Bear. Or the buttons, of course, but definitely do not delete the Pookie Bear. The Pookie Bear is responsible for anchoring this entire system. So the plugin controller can control everything. Yeah, other than that, you're good to go. So what we're going to do is we're going to save this map. With a unique name. Now I'll just quickly explain the volumes before we get into this, before we leave. This one here is a building sphere. So you can adjust the size by pressing Control R to change to your resize tool. And you can adjust the white circle inside. What this basically does is this prevents players from building around your arena. Probably don't want them to do that. And you can press Control W to go back to your regular movement tool. And this little layer here is simply a prevent movement volume, which stops players from entering or exiting the arena with your loot. So if you're going to be putting things like M249s, AKs and that sort of stuff in, you probably don't want them to go on walkabouts with it. So yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. So yeah, let's render it in the game and see what she looks like. Alright, so we are in game now. We can see our glorious Hunger Games island is sitting over here, down where we left it. So we're going to have a look at it. So we probably need to paint the ocean a little bit better. Again, this is not really meant to be this tall. I just had very shallow water here, so obviously work on your placement a little bit more than I did, but for the purposes of this demonstration, we're going to ignore it. So you can see here, if you're familiar with the plugin, there's no more loot crate spawns here anymore. It's all handled by the plugin. The plugin doesn't spawn it until the game starts, so it prevents little ninja looters from coming in. The prevent building volume, so prevent movement volume does this. I can't actually enter the arena in here anymore. I'm pretty sure I can drop things. Yeah, just can't enter the arena. So, you know, I tried using a collider, but the trees stopped spawning. So, Yeah, the prevent movement build we'll have to kind of do for now, I suppose. Alright. Anyway, if you have a look down here in the lobby, we can see our lobbies down here. And everything is golden. So what I'll do is I'll start a game up now, and you can see what she looks like when we go. So there's a couple ways to do this. First way is the game will automatically start itself. You know, every hour or whatever you can add in the configuration file. But you can do it manually to override it. So you can do start HG by itself, which will start it in. It'll sort of trigger the game to start it in the allotted amount of time. So by default it's 5 minutes. So it's a 5-minute countdown for everyone. Gives 5 minutes for everyone to sort of join the lobby, and then it'll start the game. Otherwise, you can do a seconds override. So you can put the amount of seconds in which you want the game to start in. So for example, if I want the game to start in 20 seconds, I do start HG 20. I'm going to do /HG to join. Timer finishes for joining, and I'm now in the game. Now by default, the minimum amount of players is 1, not 2, not 1. I've changed it to 1 so I can actually play the game and show you what it's like. I'm going to get on the elevators now, and yeah, we will see what happens when I get to the top. So the elevators start up. Anyone who gets left in the lobby gets automatically slain when the bubble spawns. Even if you've been in God mode, I found out. Yeah, other than that, nothing else really matters. The crates, you can probably see here, are now spawned in the center. I'm not sure if this is going to be a primitive one or a guns one. Looks like it's a guns one, so you can see here the loot is not primitive. We've got M39s and random shit. Yeah, it's actually quite a long loot list. I'm just going to fly around now. So you can see there's like mushroom spawns and everything else as well, so it's all pretty cool. Rocket launchers and stuff in here by default as well. I'm pretty sure the guns actually come with a little bit of ammunition. Yeah, good. Ammunition's probably going to be a bit scarce in this, but there are melee weapons and whatnot as well. So there are a lot of gun spawns and everything else too. So, but yeah, basically it's quite a large sort of play area, so plenty of room for your players to kind of go out, scout out, loot up, and then eventually make their way back to the center. But the way this works is you'll see here very soon, the bubble is going to spawn. And the bubble is basically like a radiation zone, so if you get caught outside of the bounds of the bubble, you take radiation. So you can see here it's spawned, it kind of sits around the edges there, and it moves. So the bubble actually goes in and out. You can see here I'm in a radiation zone, so I would start taking radiation damage if I didn't have God mode on. And yeah, I can't even interact with my inventory because to see why it stops that from happening. So yeah, stay inside the radiation zone and you're fine. And basically the purpose of this game is to simply be the last person alive. So this will eventually push all of your players to the center. Now there are a couple of options to be able to change the end zone. And what that'll do is that'll spawn the bubble around that particular center point, and that becomes the end zone. So if I wanted to add this as an end zone here, I could type a chat command in to do so, and that means the bubble would then people would need to kind of be around this general area or take radiation damage. So yeah, it's works pretty well. So let me get a list of chat commands up, and I will run you through them. Alright, so I've got a list of chat commands here. So for example, if I wanted to add this particular sort of zone as an end zone, I can simply do /add final point. You can see this has been added as a potential end zone. So basically what will happen with this is it's going to add a end zone to and choose a random one at the start of each game. So as the game launches, it chooses a random end zone, and when that bubble spawns, instead of spawning from the center of where it spawned before, it'll spawn from the center here. But the bubble is a static distance, so keep that in mind for your players. If they're at the opposite end of the island when that spawns, and half of the map is no longer accessible because the bubble spawned on this side of it, then yeah, they have a short period of time to get back into the bubbles range. The other commands are add prize. So you can see there's arguments for it there. So you can do /add prize, short name, amount. You can even add skins in there if you want. So if I wanted to add scrap as a prize, we can do /add prize, scrap, and just say 300. You can see added a new prize, scrap 300, and that saves it to your data file. So when a player wins a game and they attempt to use a chat command to redeem their prize, it'll roll a random sort of loot from whatever you've entered. So you can enter as many items as you like, and it'll pick a random amount of items depending on what your configuration settings are. You can also do /remove prize as well if you want to remove from in-game. Otherwise, you can unload the plugin and adjust the data file. And that's pretty much it for the in-game stuff. If you want to cancel a game, you can do NHG, and anyone in the game will basically go back to where they were with their original loot. So you can see here I've got my loot back, as well as the original health and metabolism and everything else. So that's one thing that the game does do. It manages all of the inventory, deletes everything, and then reapplies that back with all of its correct name instructions and skins and everything else when the player leaves the game. So we're going to jump over to the configuration side of things now, and I'll talk you through what everything does. Okay, so we're in the configuration file for Hunger Games now. So prize information is now exclusively handled through the config. I've actually just removed all of the chat commands for it because, I mean, they're not really necessary. So let's take it line by line and I'll explain what each option does. Those familiar with the plugin, a lot of this will probably be some stuff I've already covered in a previous version, but some of it has changed. So time after the initiation before the game begins, so how long they spend in the lobby. This is 300 seconds by default, which is 5 minutes. Adjust that to whatever you want. Delay after Hunger Games starts for initiating the circle. So this is how long after the elevators have kind of got to the top, they've opened, the game's begun, before the circle actually spawns. It gives players a little bit of a chance to find items, especially if you've got the circle spawning ending in different locations. Gives them some time to loot basically before they have to head towards the circle. How often should we check if a player is inside of the zone? This is this is down to server performance. So the more often you check, the more performance heavy it is. So 3 seconds is a pretty good value, especially for more populated servers. And how much should the rads increase each time it checks? So this is basically every time it catches a player outside the circle during this check here, it applies 3 radiations accumulatively to them. Ring shrink percentage, unless you know what you're doing, I wouldn't touch this. Same with the radius stuff. Time after a circle spawns before it starts building radiations. This is how long after the circle has actually appeared and started moving before radiation actually starts getting applied to players that it finds outside. Seconds between ring shrinkage events. Again, if you're not familiar with the plugin or at least have some form of coding background, I wouldn't recommend playing around with this. Outer distance is how big you want the circle to actually be, so it's maximum size. So setting that to a larger value means that the circle is going to be bigger. Dome darkness is how dark you want the dome, bearing in mind that every single time you increase this value by 1, it's spawning another dome over the top, on top of the other. So at the moment it spawns 8 domes over the top of each other. That gives it that dark sort of look, and I find that does work for most players. It is quite easy to see that you are inside the dome and where the dome line is. Making it more dark will give your players less FPS because it's obviously having to render more. Minimum ring size is the final circle, so when the dome gets to its destination point, this is going to be the size of the final ring, and that won't change. It's a static value. You can set that to 0 if you don't want it to be a final ring, and just eventually everyone will die of radiation if the game doesn't end fast enough. Announce player's deaths. So when a player dies, it's going to announce to the other participants in the game that player has died. Heal a player when they kill another player, so just kind of like a lifesteal thing. If they manage to knock someone off, they get healed for doing so. And obviously this is the value for that. Minimum players to start a game. By default, this is actually 2. So this obviously means that 2 players have to register in order to actually play the game, receive a prize. These are the chat commands. So there are plugins that sometimes do conflict with these 2 commands. So you can adjust them if you do have those conflictions. Otherwise, you know, leave them as is. These will automatically update in the announcements through the lang file as well. How often should we run Hunger Games? Set to 0 if you do not want it to auto start in seconds. So now this is overridden if you choose to use the Event Helper plugin, which is in one of these options down here. So whatever, it doesn't matter if you set this value to, you know, above 0. If you've got the Event Helper plugin set to true, it's going to use the Event Helper plugin. But if you don't, it's going to use whatever value you set here and run the game, you know, as often as you like. Despawn bodies when the game ends. This is good for performance and cleanup, so I recommend keeping that to true, but again, it's up to you. Remove players from their teams when the game starts. Now this basically prevents players from who are currently in a team it basically kicks them from their team. But at the moment, as the plugin stands, they can just re-team when they get in the lobby. So I don't find there's too much use for it. There was a couple of people who requested it, so I've just done that. But I will put probably a bit more work into the teams for a future update, because teaming does seem to be a thing in these sorts of games, as you can expect. How many rolls on a reward should the player get? This is how many times when they type the claim prize command will they actually get. How many items will they receive? You know, how many individual rolls on the item table will they receive? Clear data on new wipe. Recommend setting this to true. It means your player's prize pools are reset. All the prize information stays. Obviously, it's more just resetting the IO and resetting the player information. Maximum time for a game to run. This is the actual maximum that the game will run before the game is just simply cancelled. So 2700 seconds is the default. Broadcast when a player joins the event. So when you see a player join, it's going to show you know how many players have joined, whether we've met the minimum threshold, etc. Commands to prevent when a player is in Hunger Games. Now I'm actually going to delete this because that's now being handled from the Event Helper plugin. So you won't see that when you see this version of this, when you see the version of Hunger Games here, because that no longer exists. Slay modifier. Now this is if you're having issues with players dying in the lobby. If you find they are dying in the lobby, set the value to 0.5, and that should hopefully fix the issue. It's really just the height adjustment of the IO to determine whether the player is actually in the lobby or if they're actually above. Remove animals that spawn on the island. So if an animal spawns on the island at all, it just simply removes them. It lets your animals stops your animals from accumulating on Hunger Games Island, and yeah, keeps them off, because it is a large area and they do like to spawn on there. Otherwise, you just end up with so many animals and bears and wolves and chickens and everything else that players can't actually find in the real world. Minimum number of loot items per container. This is for the item container management. So this is how many items you want to populate per container. So I've got the default set to 3 for minimum and 3 for maximum. So obviously you're going to get 3 items per container there, but you can set that to whatever you like. So you can set it to 2 and 6. Doesn't matter. That's how many it's going to potentially populate. Loot respawn delay in minutes. This is in seconds. This is the minimum and maximum value, so it'll spawn by default every 60 to 180 seconds. It'll spawn a new container once the existing container is removed. Run the game automatically with Event Helper. Now this one here is if you want to use the Event Helper to run it consecutively with other games. So if you're running other games such as Scuba Arena or Skirmish, which is another one I'm going to be releasing soon, and Fishing Competition, which is another one I'm going to be releasing soon, it'll play them all in order. And because I'm releasing this, the Event Helper as a kind of like a foundation or like a developer's kit, any other future plugins that other developers decide to use will also be able to be queued using this. So if you are planning on running other arena games, it's recommended to leave this as true. Prize information, so you can see we've now got spaces for short name, which is the item's base name, which is what's used to identify it. Any sort of skins you want to put in there, so you can put custom skin IDs on there. Minimum and maximum quantities. and also a custom display name. So if you want items to have their own custom names, for example, if I wanted to put one of my defibrillators from a medical items plugin as a reward in here, I can do so by filling out all the details in here, and players will get a functional defibrillator as a prize potentially. Alright, and now for the fun part, the game loop profiles. So you can see here there's the way the hierarchy works is we've got our primary class information here, and then we've got our string value. So we've got primitive loot tables, and we've got gun loot tables. So primitive loot table simply has all of the different types of primitive loots that we've gone through and curated for, plus the quantities in which we want them to spawn. Now this is the max quantities. The minimum quantities, I believe, is either 1 or half of the maximum value, unless the value was set to 1. So for example, wooden arrows will spawn 20, so between 10 and 20. Fire arrows will spawn between, I think, 2 and 5. I think that's how I've done it. Otherwise it's going to be from a minimum value of 1. And you can see here that we've obviously got the gun loot table as well by default. So if you wanted to create your own table, it's actually really easy. All you need to do is just simply copy. Let's just copy the primitive one, it's a bit smaller. Copy an existing profile. So go from kind of you see the brackets open and close there, so where the comma is. Grab the list, go to the bottom, put a comma at the bottom here, and then paste this list in here. Call it something unique, so we'll say rifles only. And then you can just simply delete and add stuff that you want. So obviously we're going to be doing rifles, so we don't want any of this gear here. It's 6 in the morning and I haven't slept, so please forgive me if I'm a little bit slow at the moment. I'm pretty sure I've deleted rifles already, but you get the idea. We can kind of customize the loot as we please. So this would be a functional loot table right now. And what the plugin will do is it will randomly spawn. Based on when the game starts, it'll pick a loot profile that it's going to use throughout the duration of the game, so it's not going to change it halfway through. So that's how that works. And then down here we have the loot crate spawn positions, and this is a locally spawned offset position. So it's not something you can kind of go in and create your own unless you know what you're doing. So there's a number of containers obviously by default that it spawns. So that is pretty much it for the configuration side of Hunger Games. It is a pretty straightforward setup. So what I will do is I will show you how to do the setup for the plugins. It's really easy. It's just a matter of dragging the the Event Helper plugin and the Hunger Games plugin into your folder, into your Oxide plugins folder, and then you're pretty much good to go. So we'll do that now, and yeah, that's it. Okay, so to install the plugins, really simple. Just navigate to your Oxide folder, your plugins folder, and just simply drag in Event Helper and Hunger Games. So obviously you'll be extracting from a zip file, and that's pretty much it. The plugins are now installed, automatically gets acquired, and you can see here that loaded Hunger Games and loaded Event Helper. So we're all golden. Yep, that's pretty much it for the tutorial, guys. If you have any questions, again, feel free to get in touch with me on Discord or through Codefling Alone or wherever you've acquired the plugin from. And yeah, always open for feedback and suggestions as well, and keep an eye on this space for more arena style plugins, because I do have a few in the works, as I mentioned earlier in the video. But yeah, enjoy, have fun.